The world as we knew it effectively ended in the pre-dawn darkness of March 18, 2026, when the horizon over the Persian Gulf ignited into a haunting bruised orange that could be seen from the International Space Station. What began as a clinical campaign of targeted assassinations has suddenly mutated into a total energy Armageddon as Israeli F-35s carried out the most audacious strike in modern history, the direct bombardment of the South Pars gas field. By turning their sights on the processing hub at Asaluyeh, Israel didn't just hit a military asset. They punctured the very heart of the global energy grid, targeting the largest natural gas reservoir on the planet. This was a calculated strike designed to cripple the Iranian state's survival mechanism. But the shrapnel from that explosion hit far more than just Tehran. Within hours, the skies over the Gulf were filled with retaliatory Iranian ballistic missiles, not just aimed at Israel, but at the Western-aligned energy infrastructure of the region. The retaliatory strikes on Qatar's Laffan industrial complex and Saudi Arabia's SAMREF refinery have sent the global economy into a tailspin, leaving the world's most vital allies caught in a crossfire of burning pipelines and shattered supply contracts. On March 19, 2026, President Donald Trump took to Truth Social in a flurry of all-caps fury, publicly chastising Benjamin Netanyahu and claiming that the strike on South Pars was an act of independent defiance that he had neither authorized nor been warned about. Trump's ultimatum was bone-chilling. He warned Tehran that if Qatar is hit again, he will massively blow up every remaining piece of Iranian energy infrastructure, while simultaneously telling Israel, don't do that, regarding further hits on oil and gas sites. As the fires at the refineries reach the stratosphere, the world is now obsessively watching to see what Donald Trump's next move will be in this high-stakes game of geopolitical chicken. Despite his public distancing from the South Pars strike, the American president is operating from a position of absolute, singular authority. Military insiders suggest that Trump's next move could be the declaration of a total energy exclusion zone over the Persian Gulf, where any vessel or facility not cleared by the U.S. Navy becomes a legitimate target for preemptive neutralization. There is also growing speculation that Trump may bypass Congress entirely to authorize a ground extraction force, not to occupy Iran, but to physically seize and secure the remaining nuclear materials that Netanyahu claims are still hidden in the mountains. By signaling a red line for Qatar while rebuking Israel, Trump is positioning himself as the ultimate arbiter of the conflict, effectively telling both sides that the era of regional decision-making is over. His next move is likely to be a maximum pressure 2.0 summit, where he dictates terms of surrender to Tehran under the threat of total physical annihilation of their remaining 85% of energy capacity. The economic consequences of this lack of coordination are already manifesting as a monumental meltdown across the G7 nations. In Asian markets, oil has already defied gravity, surging past $115 per barrel and briefly touching $170 in speculative trading as the reality of a force majeure declaration from Qatar Energy sinks in. This isn't just a temporary price hike, it is a fundamental fracturing of the modern supply chain. Liquefied natural gas, LNG prices have exploded by 60% overnight, and with the Laffan refinery suffering extensive damage, analysts are shifting their recovery outlooks from weeks to months. In the UK, gas prices have already doubled, and the Bank of England has been forced into a unanimous hold on interest rates, abandoning planned cuts as inflation forecasts spiral toward a 5% shock zone. The crisis has expanded beyond fuel. We are now seeing the secondary effects on neon gas, essential for the semiconductor chips that power everything from your smartphone to the F-35s flying over the Gulf, and fertilizer components, which means that the energy war of today is guaranteed to become the food war of tomorrow. From the wheat fields of Europe to the tech hubs of South Korea, the world is staring into an abyss where the cost of living is being dictated by the precision of a missile strike in the Persian Gulf. Meanwhile, on the ground in Tehran and Jerusalem, the human cost and the strategic shadow war are reaching a fever pitch. Benjamin Netanyahu, standing before a room of skeptical journalists on the night of March 19th, signaled that the air war may only be the beginning, hinting at a ground component that would finally achieve what decades of sanctions could not: regime change. Israel has spent the last week systematically decapitating the Iranian security apparatus, assassinating the top commanders responsible for crushing domestic dissent in an effort to create the conditions for the Iranian people to grasp their freedom. However, the reality on the streets of Tehran is far more grim. While there are reports of regular police failing to show up for duty, the paramilitary Basij forces have intensified their crackdown, executing young men accused of waging war against God, and warning the population that any protest will be treated as collaboration with the Zionist enemy. The regime, though bleeding and cracking according to Israeli intelligence, appears to be entering its most dangerous, cornered animal phase, driven by a thirst for revenge and a survival instinct that disregards the total collapse of its civilian economy. As U.S. B-52 bombers depart from RAF Fairford for their latest missions, The international community is frantically trying to delineate its interests from the US-Israeli axis. On March 20th, 2026, leaders from the UK, France, Germany, and Japan issued a desperate joint statement calling for a moratorium on energy infrastructure attacks, effectively trying to separate the Strait of Hormuz problem from the Iran problem. They are moving forward with an independent plan to use minesweepers and naval escorts to restart shipping, while nations like India and Pakistan are bypassing the Western alliance entirely to maintain direct lines of communication with Tehran. The world is witnessing a historical pivot point, where the Petro-Dollar system and the traditional nuclear umbrella are being tested to their absolute limits. We are no longer just watching a war between nations. We are watching the dismantling of the 20th century energy order in real time. Whether this leads to the long-term gain Trump promises or a permanent global depression depends entirely on whether the next missile aimed at a refinery is the one that finally pushes the world over the brink into a conflict from which there is no recovery. The global order has not just been shaken. It has been fundamentally dismantled. As of March 21st, 2026, we are witnessing the final collapse of the post-WW2 security architecture. While the fires at the South Pars and Ras Laffan facilities continue to rage, the tactical successes hailed by Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz, who just announced that strikes will intensify starting tomorrow, Sunday, March 22nd, are being overshadowed by a terrifying new reality. Earlier today, the US and Israel reportedly struck the Natanz nuclear facility. While Iran's atomic agency claims there is no radioactive leakage yet, the message is undeniable. There are no more off-limits targets. This is no longer a surgical strike operation. It is a systematic deconstruction of a nation-state. And the fallout is radiating across every continent. Amidst this escalating violence, Donald Trump has signaled a shocking potential pivot. On Friday, he claimed the US is winding down military operations and is very close to meeting its objectives. This has sent shockwaves through Jerusalem, where Netanyahu's cabinet is pushing for a total regime collapse. The rift is now a canyon. Trump is moving to ease sanctions on stranded Iranian oil to stop the global $170 per barrel nightmare, while Israel is preparing a wave of strikes for the heart of Tehran. This internal Western breakdown has left the world in a state of strategic freefall. If Trump unilaterally winds down while Israel ramps up, we could see a scenario where the US Navy and the IDF are effectively working at cross purposes in the same congested airspace, creating a risk of accidental engagement that could turn a regional war into a global tragedy. The economic no-recovery zone is already here. The UK's Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, has just convened an emergency meeting with the Bank of England to address a cost-of-living crisis that is now beyond the control of traditional monetary policy. With 22 Indian-flagged vessels and hundreds of sailors currently stranded in the Persian Gulf, and Qatar warning that the Ras Laffan plant could take 5 years and $20 billion to fully repair, the just-in-time supply chain of the 21st century has been permanently severed. We are seeing 10% surcharges on steel and chemicals in Europe, and the IEA has officially labeled this the greatest energy and food security challenge in human history. The Petro-Dollar is being replaced by a survival barter system, as nations like India and China move to secure direct non-Western energy lines with whatever is left of the Iranian and Gulf infrastructure. In a desperate lashing-out move, Iran has attempted to strike the joint UK-US base at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean with ballistic missiles. While the attack was unsuccessful, it proves that Tehran is now willing to target assets 2,500 miles away from its borders. The shadow war is now a total war, and the civilian toll in Iran has already surpassed 3,000 dead and 18,000 injured in just the first week of this escalation. As we head into Sunday's promised intensification, the question is no longer who wins, but what will be left of the global economy to govern once the smoke finally clears. The world is holding its breath, waiting to see if the Natanz strike was the final spark, or just the beginning of a nuclear-tinged finale to the 20th century energy era.